Welcome to Data Wars.
Welcome back to Data Wars podcast, where Ash and I explore intersection of data, AI, cloud, and other technologies that are changing the way the business operate and function. I'm thrilled today to have someone I really value a lot in my role here. Kevin Bennett is the VP of Marketing Operations and Analytics at Informatica, where we work together. Kevin is a growth-focused marketing visionary with over 20 years of experience driving pipeline revenue and operational excellence. Kevin, I'm so glad to have you. And I know, Ash, you are also excited about this podcast.
Yes, absolutely, Prash. Kevin, thank you for joining us. I want to go right into questions. And I want to start by hearing a little about your journey, Kevin. What has inspired you to pursue a career in marketing, operations, and analytics?
Yeah, first off, thank you, Ash and Prash, for inviting me into this podcast. So very excited about having this conversation. I think the quick answer to that, right, Ash, is what inspired me to get into this really was a series of, I would say, steps in my journey, starting with really in sales. I really spent a lot of time in sales, working with data, using data helped me become more competitive as a salesperson. And from there, my love of data just sort of continued to build. And then the progression into marketing operations from sales was a natural progression for me because really I wanted to help sales get better at what they were doing. And from my observation, having a lot of success using data to be effective as a salesperson, I wanted to do the same for other salespeople.
Nice.
And so that the next step for me is how could I do that? The answer became very apparent that marketing operations was an area where I could have that direct and indirect impact on sales outcomes.
That's really cool, Kevin. And it's very insightful to know sort of what led you here. You started in sales and then you wanted to take that knowledge forward. So what has developed your leadership style over the years?
I would say what's helped me develop my leadership style, I think, really is having a lot of good mentors along the way, and a lot of great people I was able to learn from, but also really anchoring a lot of my leadership style in empathy and a genuine curiosity. And I think as you have a genuine curiosity and you lead with empathy, I think there's a lot of things you could do to punch above your weight. And I think that actually gives you an opportunity as a leader to get additional leverage through the whole organization rather than just in your own team. And so I think a lot of credit to mentors, just a lot of credit to all the great leaders that I've had an opportunity to engage with over the years.
Yeah.
And coming from you, those words mean a lot because you've been through the whole cycle. And, when we read these words of being, having empathy, they seem like just words you read in a book. But, when somebody like you says it, it really kind of puts a lot of force behind, that style of leadership. So very insightful.
Yeah. Look, talk about punching above the weight. Leading a modern marketing team is never a small feat. It brings a variety of challenges in all sort of ways. You and I have been working together for a long time here, Kevin, and I'm always curious to learn from someone like you who's been here and doing this kind of stuff for a long time. How do you set a vision for a future where you need to really, really balance the long-term vision, long-term goals with the day-to-day demand of the running operation analytics kind of function? Is largely, it's a hugely influential program within an organization, within the marketing departments. So running day-to-day job of that is hugely challenging, of course, right? So I'm kind of trying to understand, how do you balance long-term goals and the short-term day-to-day things? I'm curious to hear.
No, it's a great question. I think there's three things. One, I think you really have to start with, really understanding the vision of the company and where's the company going, having a good sense of the market, the category that you're in, obviously who you're selling to, And then from there, number two is have a vision for your go-to-market, where you're going to make big bets for driving growth, right? And it's easier said than done because there's a lot of different perspectives on how to do that, and there's probably not one way to do it. So it really requires a lot of input for a lot of different teams to really articulate that go-to-market perspective and really the strategy around that. And then I would say the third thing is, how do you want to reflect back how people process data and tech, and now AI can help drive efficiency, scale, and other foundational sustainable leverage for growth? Because it's not just meeting the goal or the number, but it's about consistently meeting that goal and number, and having the operational excellence and have an appreciation for that to be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I love how AI has been adopted as efficiency and scale drivers. And we'll see more of this. And, I think definitely, you are leading the pack when it comes to kind of using AI to deliver efficiency and scale. So what does a typical day look like, in your role, Kevin? And, how do you motivate your team to stay focused and innovating and growing? It's such a dynamic field, right? Because every day there's new stuff coming in. It's definitely not easy. Like, how do you manage all this?
It's a great question. I mean, I think, as I think about how you take a vision and then translate that into motivating people who really are into the day-to-day work, right? And how do you keep them being able to see the forest through the trees while becoming operational excellent players in the mix, and knowing, having an appreciation for what success looks like on a day-to-day basis and celebrating the small wins. So how to motivate the team really is about setting that vision, setting that course, and really articulating, helping them understand how their work translates into business outcomes. And I think a lot of us give lip service to that, but you really have to work one-on-one in the craft, because everybody is doing a different job. They're doing different activities day to day. They're swizzling in a chair and doing many things. And it's hard to be able to intuitively understand how all the dots are connected, I think, for all of us. So I work very hard to make sure the team understands every bit of the work that they're doing and how it contributes to the top line or the bottom line. And that's an ongoing thing, right? And I think you asked about innovation.
Right. Yes.
So I think there's the idea of managing the day to day, and then innovation. Those do compete with each other. So I think the day to day is very much about, really driving prioritized set of tasks and deliverables in the very tactical level. But then I work with the team and set up 25 to 35% of their time to focus on innovation. And so we track that as well. And that can take many forms. That could be innovation around applications, data, process, AI. But I really try to create space and prioritize that type of activity, because it's a different type of work, right? It's hard to go from day-to-day activities and then think big and do all this. So I do try to encourage my team, even every day, every week, to keep track of, how are they devoting 25, 35% of their time to the future and innovation overall.
The innovation equation is an interesting one, because, right, and one side of the aisle, we have day-to-day job of getting things done. Right. The other side of the equation is, and Kevin, you and I have seen this in our organization here, is how do you get better? How do you produce better? How do you get productivity? How do you become efficient at what you're doing while also exploring new innovative things? I think that's an interesting balance for me, right? And my take on that is, like, if you are not doing that today, if you're a marketer, a modern marketer, and if you're not learning new innovations, if you're not running at the pace at which the rest of the companies and the organizations are running, you are going to be left behind, right? So there's a constant drive towards, like, there were these people talk about, like, hey, I want to get a job where I can do what I'm asked to do, and that's all I'm going to do, and I expect my pay to be there. But those days are somewhat like diminishing now, right? Like those days are gone, where you would just do the things you're supposed to do and be done with it. There's always a need for being more at the forefront of innovation, learning new things, adopting. I mean, otherwise, I mean, the people very loosely say this, like machines will take over the world, but that's exactly what's going to happen if you don't adopt and grow and have that growth mindset, right? I think that's kind of where you were going with that.
Yeah. I think with AI also, the other challenge, especially big companies have, is how do you stay nimble? Because things are moving so fast that getting your team up to speed with everything which is happening, versus 10 years ago, operations was at a different pace, right? It's like juggling a lot of things, but a lot of businesses are kind of having the same challenges. So how do you learn trends now to ensure alignment between marketing and sales team? Because it's always about kind of creating this seamless transition between generation of demand and managing your pipeline. Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that, Kevin?
yeah. I think there's I think four things that come to mind, right? I mean, I think fundamentally, you want to invest in the relationship, right?
Mm.
You know, and what I mean by that is your relationships aren't just inside the company. Your relationships are outside the company. These are your peers. These are people that you look to and could be your former mentors. So investing in all relationships, 360 relationships, if you will, of people in your network, people inside the company. And you, to your point, yeah, learning
Mm.
is kind of the crux of it, right? You want to
Right.
absorb as much information as possible and gain as many perspectives as possible, right?
Mm. Mm.
To get
Mm.
that well-rounded view. And you want to not only bring that into the company, but you also want to, be a change agent for even other people outside of the company, right?
Right.
And make sure that you're not only just a resource to your company, but you're a resource to customers as well. So there's a
Mm.
huge accountability to investing in all your relationships to be a lifetime learner and have that growth mindset, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's, a lot of work that needs to be done to for a lot of companies to really build
Mm.
internal relationships, right? Like we talk about cross-functional muscle and things like this, and
Mm.
um, and when you build cross-functional muscle, you can crystallize a collective of KPIs
Mm.
um, a lot easier, right? And it's really the
Mm-hmm.
collective KPIs that really help create some stability within cross-functional work, right?
Mm. Mm.
Um, so I'm veering into sort of how to, build a good, infrastructure, or build a good process for, driving value. But a lot of these things can be applied in a lot of different ways, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
So how much of the focus, like when you're kind of leading these teams, um net new business, for example, right? I mean, you have existing clients and you also have the net new business. How do you decide, which, it's a global company, how do you decide where to market? How do you focus on, you know the balance between, targeting resources in a specific market to kind of generate new business versus kind of keeping existing business also growing?
Uh, it's a good question because, you always have to keep the lights on. And as an operational leader, it's really about making sure nothing breaks, making
Mm.
sure you're innovating for the future, making sure you're on the cutting edge of AI and what's going on. But at the same time, the market opportunity that you have today is not going to be the same market opportunity you're going to have tomorrow.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Why is that? Because buyers change, companies change, product changes,
Mm.
maybe overall strategy changes, competitive set changes. And as we know, the dynamics of this market are such that you can't just rest on your laurels, right? Like I think in high tech, we are
Mm.
kind of abundantly aware of that. We live that. I think we always have a certain amount of healthy anxiety, right? So that usually translates into doing market analysis and really trying to anticipate where everything is going, right? You're not always
Yeah.
going to get it
Mm-hmm.
right, but I think you really have to practice a lot of what if scenarios. Think about, if this competitor is not there, or,
Mm.
if this market is not there, you have to kind of do a lot of what if planning to get it right, and that sort of hedges sort of what you're doing today and setting yourself up for the future, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
I
quite
like that,
educational.
Kevin. You just that reminds me of like the complexity of the B2B marketing we are in, right?
Mm.
Over the many years we've been working on this. It's an area which is continue to evolve. I think there are new applications, new technologies that constantly come our way, and
Mm.
the marketing stack alone, if you look at like what it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is completely different than what we have today, right? You name
Mm.
a thing, there's like 45 different applications doing that thing. So Kevin, you and I have constantly talk about this, like in a world where like there's B2C marketing, and then there's complex B2B marketing, and you specialize in that. You spent your time and years doing that stuff.
Mm.
I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the evolution of that B2B marketing, how it is shaped over the years, what kind of things you've seen, and especially in the context of the buyers, right? The front office, back office, the LOB buyers, the IT buyers, CEOs, CIOs, CDOs, you name it, right? The complex mix of different personas involved. um, how is that evolution happen? And as you have seen, I think that I think gives us a very good picture of where your mind is at.
Yeah, part of, as I think about it, we live in a world where, um, if we've been doing this long enough, we take certain things for granted. We make assumptions, and that's easy to do when you've been doing things for a long time. And when I reflect back and go, like, gosh, it was only 15 years ago where digital marketing wasn't even a thing, right? Like, and now it's
Right.
passe. And
Yeah.
when I reflect back and think about, what marketing really was doing not that long ago versus now. I mean, eh,
Yeah.
when you do that, you realize like how far we've really come in the last 15 years. And I was thinking
Mhm.
before this, it was like, gosh, there's other functions that didn't have to transform as much as marketing, right? Like if you've been in marketing for a long time, it
Yeah.
feels like every year it's transforming. There's something new to learn in another, and that's what makes it exciting, dynamic, in my opinion. But I think that I don't, I don't think there's any other function that's had to transform over the last 15 years as much as marketing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, if you think about the systems, the data, the expectations, the accountability to revenue, all these great things, which is definitely a privilege and honor to be accountable to.
Mm.
However, for every marketer that you probably interview, who've been doing this for a while, will attest to the fact that it's been a slog, right? Like it's been
Mhm.
a big challenge to sit in the function, and try to be consistent because everything is changing, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and whether it's an application that you have to interface with to learn for the very first time, or whether it's the expectations of what you're going to do with an event and how that needs to be transformed, or
Mm.
everything is being challenged year over year. So I think on one hand that's exciting and challenging, but on
Yeah.
another, it can be very topsy turvy and disorienting for a lot of people. So I think that's why, as marketing leaders, we're even more accountable for how to manage through transformation, right? Like we're
Mm.
very sensitive to recognizing that you have to communicate effectively to the teams to really articulate the changes that are going on and some of the change management aspects that are going to affect their day-to-day jobs. I
Mm.
think, but through that, I think it's made us better leaders overall, through these dynamics, because now we don't sort of take anything for granted. We know and have
Mhm.
the power, feel like anything can change. So there's an empowering element to it. But you can't lose the people in the process. So I think you have to keep underscoring really the communication side, and
Mm.
really articulate what kind of journey you're on, and
Mm.
try to help people visualize what that looks like. And that will go a long way to maintain the support without losing people along the way.
Hmm.
Mhm.
One thing comes to my mind, Kevin, is life cycle management used to be a nice to have, and today it's almost a mandate. So, what's your perspective on how this shift impacts marketing strategy? Especially in a global organization like Informatica.
Yeah, I mean, I think life cycle management is as I was thinking about it, is like customer relationship management,
Yeah.
right? Like we're
Yeah.
it's these words we put together, and then we create an image in our mind. Life cycle, okay, I think we know what that is. Customer relationship, I think we know what that is. Is that a relationship, marketing relationship to the customer? Is that the sales relationship? It's all relationships, right? So
Yeah.
you take these big things that are just terms, and you always have to boil them down even further, right? And create context and create a vision in my mind. Because if you look at CRM, just an example, lifecycle management, it has been around. It's not brand new. Sometimes we
Yes.
dust these things off and then it feels new again, or we're coming at it from a different direction. But if you take customer relationship management, let me ask you guys, like 15 years ago, what was that? Right?
Yeah.
What comes to mind for me is like Salesforce coming out, gangbusters,
Right.
hey, and we're taking over this category. We're CRM, but they weren't CRM. They were Salesforce automation.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask yourself, like, who is actually delivering on the promise of customer relationship management? And it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that's it. It's an aspiration, and you don't stop trying to do it well. But I think with any craft or any journey, there's probably not a singular final destination, right? Like it's
Yeah.
something that you're trying to get better at.
Yeah.
And I do think lifecycle management is the same thing. No matter where you start, it's a forever thing, right? That's in the word life cycle, and that tends to be, this virtuous
A reiterating
loop.
continuous loop,
Yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
not going to stop somewhere. That brings us to an interesting point about, like, just learning from your expertise, like, what are some of the advices you would give for someone, again, companies are at different range in different areas of maturity, right? Some are with the advanced level of maturity, some are not. And I'm curious what advice you would give for someone who is just starting on a maturity journey here when it comes to marketing operations.
I think for folks who are interested in marketing and marketing operations, I do think it has to start with a love of data, right? Because if you think about, when we think about people, process, technology, data, now AI, a lot of it can't be done without data or clean data or accurate data, right? You can integrate as many applications as you want, and you might have a passion for the application side. But if you're struggling with the data, or you're just not as enthusiastic about the data, then it's really hard to do your job effectively. You really have to have a passion for the data side, because when you're integrating applications, you're integrating data. And you have to have an appreciation for what you think quality is, because there are users on the other side. So I would say for folks who are coming into this, or even folks who are in operations, continue to reinforce your love of the data side. I don't think you can go wrong with that, because you can take that experience, and whenever you work with data, pretty much to any other function. Certainly if you wanted to stay in operations, or you wanted to get into other functions, a lot of other functions, there's an HR ops, there's a IT ops, there's a, pick your department, there's probably an operational equivalent. And they're probably doing very similar work. So I think anybody who's getting into this, even if you start in marketing and do this work, there's extensibility, I think, with the skill set to other departments overall.
Yeah. And then the aspect of AI, we touched on that a little bit right earlier, but let's shift our focus on the future of marketing and AI as a growth driver. For me, AI is already doing significant impact on our roles, right? And the way we use, the way we ideate, the way we start with a draft of what we can through the help of UI, rather than doing everything ground up like in the past we used to do. Just 3 years ago, as to how we used to do versus now, it's completely changed. And I truly believe that AI is becoming a significant driver for growth and in generally in marketing. And I'm curious about your point of view, Kevin, and see how are you seeing AI shaping the future of marketing, particularly the operations and analytics?
I get this question a lot, and I like the question, right?
I had no doubt.
But it doesn't mean I have the right answer yet, right? And I think we're all in the same boat. and I think we, spend time, all of us, thinking about this one way or another. But I think if you asked me 60 days ago, my answer would have been very different. I think today my answer is, if you look at like digital marketing or other things that were kind of shiny objects in the last few years, where we all gravitate to the next thing, which we just can't help it. It's a human behavior.
Yeah.
But but unlike digital transformation or digital marketing and Web 2.0, these things that we've had to pass through over the last, let's say, 10 years, AI is transforming. Even if you can't see it, it's already in full swing, right? So like digital marketing probably took a little bit longer to sort of like catch a gear, right? Like there was kind of an, initial aspiration, and the adoption curve was kind of slow and steady. I think with, other digital trans things, like Web 2.0, or let's say paid media around social media and things, that took a little while. Like there's always early adopters, and there's people kind of wait and see, right? Second movers. AI, you can't be a second mover. You got to be a first mover, right? Like it's not one of because the rate of maturity for AI and the impact to it is going to be even greater than what digital marketing was to marketing, right? So AI in the marketing context is even more transformative than Web 2.0 or digital trends or digital marketing. And it's hard to see that, but if you think about, okay, digital marketing was, yes, it was a different way of doing marketing, but it still followed some of the fundamentals of what we were familiar with, right? Just in a different channel or different context. You're still segmenting, you're still targeting. Whereas AI changes the whole equation very quickly, where it could be doing a lot of it for you, right? And doing a lot of the thinking for you, and actually can do a lot of the actions for you, right? But already, the future of marketing with AI, imagine, and it's going to impact the whole value chain, as I like to call it, of marketing, right? From using it to size up markets, analyzing market segments, which is a big area of our discipline, is doing segmentation, determining optimal message by persona. I mean, I think this is an area where, we're handcrafting a lot of this work, but AI will give us a huge head start, or we'll do most of the work there. And then already creating one-to-one content on the fly. We already see this. It's already happening, where we aren't creating content anymore. It's creating content for us, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be in a world not too far away where every one of us is going to have bots that are going to be doing email for us or be our proxy in meetings. I mean, it sounds crazy, but
I met somebody last night in an influencer marketing dinner in the city, Kevin. And one of the things I heard about this is one of the influencer. She has created 2 years worth of content. Okay. And that was a hard part, obviously. And the easy part, you won't believe it, she has automated the hell out of that. And the automation basically helps her create this whole persona journey for feeding that content on a weekly basis to her audience that is obviously continue to grow, and completely automated the shit out of that. Sorry, my French, but like she doesn't have to do one thing or write one email anymore, because next 2 years, all those people who are signed up to her program will automatically get one piece of her content, which is already created, by the way, from her, and she doesn't have to do anything anymore. That for me is the next level of automation, right? And she just literally turned half her work around that. She just focused now on next thing that she wants to do. That for me is the kind of pinnacle that we can potentially get to when it comes to AI and things like that, right? So it's amazing. It almost feels like she's sending those emails, but she's not doing anything whatsoever. The tool does it.
Kind of having customizations, because I just kind of building on what you said, Prash, is having companies have these templates which are not sort of fixed template like we have it today, but based on the the news and the events, they kind of evolve, and you can kind of feed your own persona like you mentioned, and it creates content to be sent to your customer, placing you right sort of to take advantage of certain events which happen in real time.
Yeah,
to have real-time marketing.
that's powerful,
You know,
right? So
yeah, absolutely. And it also makes me curious, Kevin, this is for you. Um, you touched a bit about teams using content AI for content generation. How is the team you manage today leveraging AI? How do you see the team using it in 3 to 5 years? Like we touched a bit about bots, making it happen. But what sort of things are being done today by your team to leverage AI?
Yeah, we like many folks who might be listening to the podcast is that we're experimenting with a number of things. We're spinning a lot of plates. It's kind of in our charter to learn, right? And learn as much as we can, given the amount of time in the day. Like I said, but that 25 to 35% is sort of allowing the team to learn and think about innovation, right? Because AI for us is innovation, right?
Mm.
So anything kind of new in this construct fits in that bucket for our team. But to answer the question, yeah, we're creating one-to-one emails. AI is doing that, not
Right.
quite at the super large scale, very pilot
Right.
based, but it's already proving itself. And there's an ROI on one-to-one emails versus building templates. So we're already
Mm.
doing that. And we're also just a little bit more on that. I think is compelling here is it's not only creating the content, it's actually sending the email, it's getting
Mm.
reply, and it's replying back. So much
Oh,
like how uh, chat GPT works in sort of this dialogue kind of going this way,
right.
uh, email chat GPT kind of goes this way, right? Where you have a reply and
Mm.
response, right? Like, so, but it's the same technology. It's very chat based. You're just chatting an email because it's interpreting response
Oh, it's
with
exciting.
some time delay, and then it's giving you an answer. So what's the difference of a dialogue in email or dialogue in, let's say, Teams or Slack, or a dialogue in ChatGPT? It's question and answer, right?
Yeah.
Right. Um,
Oh.
some other areas that we're playing around with is AI and data management,
Mm.
AI for predictive models, AI
Mm.
for pipeline intelligence, and really looking at our pipeline in detail and finding different ways of looking at it. And AI for writing Python scripts, right?
Mm.
And as an analytics leader, we
Wow.
are getting a head start on using it to write code
Mhm.
scripts. And so that's proving out to drive a lot of efficiency for us already.
Oh, that's amazing. Um, it's almost like experimenting in real time, trying to figure out what's working, what's not working. Um, so as and your team is experimenting with this stuff, what are the key challenges you have kind of seen, which you faced in the last 6 months, last year, in adopting AI? And now that you have sort of implemented some of it, how did you overcome these hurdles?
Um, I think I think the hurdles are ongoing, right? Like I don't think we've
Yeah.
overcome many hurdles outside of trying to influence people to let's run a pilot, right, and create some
Mm.
space for experimentation. Because anything that you put on the team's plate is additive to what they're already doing, and they're usually maxed
Yeah.
out.
True.
So the first hurdle is creating the space and the time and the priority,
That's a great
and being
point.
clear on how much time are we willing to invest in it, so that people don't over rotate accidentally into things that might not have a immediate business outcome, right? You know, but I think the bigger challenges, I think, really come around budget and business process, right? Once you get past the experimentation, the biggest challenges, I think, for AI is advocating for budget, because usually there's not a hard coded budget line item in the annual budget for AI yet. I think many brands are probably starting to put that in. But the other biggest hurdle is business process
Mm.
vision. Um, and anybody can play around with AI and get delighted. I think we all do. But how do you all actually use it in a production way, and how do you map it into process in such a way that it just
Mm.
becomes part of the experience, not something that's a toy that you're playing with on the side and getting pretty giddy about, but
Mm.
really is helping more than one person maximize business
It's hard.
outcomes from a process point of view.
Yeah, that's a hard problem because just if you take the example you gave on the email, Chat GPT email, it's easy to do it for one person, one use case, but now you want to scale it with the entire team across geographies. That's a hard problem now. So, and I believe there's also challenges in how do you um, have a perspective and know-how in terms of kind of building something like this, right? So one thing is the use case, and then going after the technology aspect of it as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Kevin, you one of the things which I valued a lot about you and your role here is how often do you get in a conversation with a customer or an organization that we are working with, and sort of try to understand what they're trying to do, the desired outcomes they're trying to drive, and the technology investment they want to make, and how does this, how does the overall solution that we offer fit into their needs, right? So, I've seen you bring in some very insightful, points to those conversations. And I'm just curious to learn, how does this philosophy of influence, especially around marketing operations and customer engagement, sort of like, how do you leverage that for these discussions? I'm really, really curious to learn about that part.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where every time I talk to customers and they're solving problems. Anytime I'm talking to a problem solver, I'm learning something new, and
Mm.
I'm listening very carefully, because you're only as good as what you're learning and how active you are in your listening process to really try to understand how different people are solving problems, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways to get success on solving a problem. And you're always looking for different shortcuts or quick, faster paths. And so I think first off, meeting with customers, I'm learning probably more from them than they are learning from me. They probably don't know this, but I relish in learning about the architecture or learning about the techniques. And it's easy for me to get kind of lost in that and forget that I'm, representing our brand and, trying to sell something, because you do get excited about the architecture and the overall solutions. And to me, that's exciting, right? That's the exciting part, because we're all practitioners at the end of the day, and we all are building things. And so when
Right.
you meet other builders, it's fun to just say, like, how did they do it? Like, how do they approach it? What are some of the lessons they learned?
The beauty of that is that you become sort of like being a seller to being an advocate, right?
Yeah.
Being a champion, right? Someone explained to me an example of, I think one of my team member talked about this person who is going on buying a toilet for her new house, and she is obviously when you go and want to buy a toilet, is that's all your need is, you will be surprised how many brands, how many types, how many categories of toilets that are available.
It
And
is
she
absolutely
has no idea
true.
what she wanted, and finally she said, okay, you know what, there are so many options, I'm not going to buy anything right now, I'm going to just not do this investment, right?
Yeah.
uh, in the other
Choice
hand,
paradox.
if you have one guide in that shop that she could actually talk to as human to human and say, hey, look, I'm looking for this, and he will have specific 3 questions. What color do you have? A color preference? Do you have any preference around how you want to which room you want to have it, etc., right? 3 or 4 questions, and if she answers clearly about what her needs are, he will be able to suggest, here are the 3 options you have, versus 1,000 options that she had in front of her before and she couldn't make a decision. And I think that's the key role that an advocate plays versus someone else in the organization, right? So I really like that part of the narration you just
Yeah.
talked about, how to
And
how
well
to help
summarized.
customers versus sell, so
Absolutely. I think, Prasha, I love the way you gave that analogy for that. Kevin, so this has been an enlightening conversation. Before we wrap up, what's one piece of advice you'll give to marketing leaders who are looking to future-proof their operations?
I think it's one, keep building proposals, right?
Mm,
Budgets, will come and go, but
mm,
I think it's imperative that we all, when I'm talking about marketing ops or we have to just keep building proposals, because you might get a no on your internal proposal now, but tomorrow you might get a yes. So really that speaks to just staying on your toes, being ready. If you have good ideas, try to get them on paper, represent them. What's the worst thing that can happen is somebody says no, but you want to really kind of drive more perspective, because even if somebody says no, they've learned something, right? Like when you build a proposal, you've thought through the ROI and the implementation bit. So keep doing that, even if you don't have a budget for AI or feel like the company isn't investing at the right level. Don't stop in terms of driving different points of view and advocating for what will help the business, even if it can't be immediate, right? Two is really build and get as much feedback on a vision as you can. Have a vision. The visions don't have to be perfect, but if you have a very strong point of view, get as much feedback on that point of view as you can, and keep crafting that. And it may not ever be a final piece of work, but the vision, it really is about the collective organizational perspective, right? Like it's not just one person's perspective that makes a vision. It's everybody sort of contributing and agreeing that this is the right flight of travel, the right destination, and maybe the right components to represent the organization going forward. And then I think the third thing, build a vision that is flexible with apps, data, and processes. Since the mantra is be able to adapt quickly, right? And this has been true with marketing, I would say, for the last 15 years, as we had to turn into performance marketers. You put any term you want in there, into, revenue marketers, performance marketers, let's see. But we've adapted very quickly, I think, as a marketing organization. We're quick to turn pretty quickly on budgets, because we know where to invest our money, because we have analytics that helps us that we didn't have, say, 15 years ago. But now with AI, you have to adapt even faster. So if you think that you're already in adaptive mode and you've achieved some success in feeling like you're adaptable, you're going to have to go up another 2 or 3x in terms of your adaptability and flexibility, meaning that you don't want to get too wedded to your apps, your data, your existing processes, because they're all going to need to change. And they may not all change at once, but you have to be ready to let go of all the great work that you've already done so that you can invent new things.
No, that's great. I think those are great tips. Prash, you want to?
Yeah, no, look, for me, this is very insightful conversation, Kevin. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I learned some new lessons in marketing, and that will be I want to see when that stops, but it doesn't look like it is going to stop anytime soon. I will continue to be a student of the thoughts and the learnings you share upon us. So this was brilliant insights. I took away a lot of things here, right? Just from vision to execution of a modern marketing team to building a maturity, using AI as a game changer in marketing operations, and also being that customer-centric and customer-driven a little bit, right? And spreading your true advocacy to teams beyond marketing, working closely with sales and helping them as well. And in the process, obviously, customers who are critical part of this equation. So I learned a lot, and this has been a very, very insightful conversation, Kevin. I'm super glad we were able to do this finally.
Yes.
And folks who are listening to this episode, look, these are the kind of insights we want to bring. We want to bring in experts like Kevin and others to these discussions, and primarily focused on data, cloud, and AI topics. And I'm super excited we were able to do that today. And definitely, if you're on our platforms, do subscribe so you don't miss out on key insights like these. And we continue to deliver great podcasts like this on a weekly basis. So with that, we'll wrap up. Ash, anything you want to say last?
Just a huge thank you to Kevin for making this happen. I was also, just making a lot of pointers as you were talking, Kevin, and some of the stuff you mentioned, I have personally not heard this stuff because I don't come from a marketing background. Just things about the pipeline and how closely they're monitored, and looking at AI to monitor pipelines. A lot of really cool concepts, which I can't wait to get out the podcast and myself explore. So thank you so much for sharing and being so open with us.
No, Ash and Prash, thank you guys for inviting me to your podcast, and hopefully I get another invitation back. This has been a pleasure for me, and likewise, I've learned a lot as well.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Sounds good. Okay. Thank you all.